This man is Jay. Even though he was born into a very rich family, he decided to live independently in Los Angeles because he never got along with his family, especially his father. Unfortunately, life didn't go well with him as he ended up having the habit of gambling and was trapped in debt. As a result, he was forced to work as a janitor in a mental hospital. That day, Jay went to a bar and accidentally met a loan shark named Vincent. Vincent was trying to collect his debt, but Jay said he had no money. After checking Jay's wallet to make sure he wasn't lying, Vincent gave him until Friday or he would ask his men to kill him. That next day at work, Jay wanted to borrow money from his coworker, but his coworker said he didn't have any money and instead advised Jay to go home and attend the wedding of his younger brother, Jerry, and then just ask his father for money. Thanks to his coworker's advice, Jay decided to call his parents and tell them that he was going home to New Orleans. When he called, Jay lied that he worked as an administrator at the largest mental hospital and had a beautiful girlfriend who worked as a nurse. Hearing that, his father told him to bring his lover and Jay was forced to comply. Thanks to his lies, he tried to ask all the nurses at work to go out with him, but no one was interested in him because they knew that he was just a drunkard who loved gambling. During lunch break, Jay was called to the office of a doctor named Dr. Bertelman. When he arrived there, Dr. Bertelman was angry with Jay for giving a mental patient an inappropriate magazine and alcohol. He then warned Jay not to interact with his patients anymore. After scolding Jay, Dr. Bertelman met his new patient, Daisy, a girl who tended to daze around since her mother died. She was scared and afraid that her mother would haunt her. Her condition required her to be admitted to a mental hospital. That night, Daisy suddenly shouted. Jay, who passed by suddenly, went straight into her room and found another patient who was pretending to be a doctor and gave her medicine. After beating the attacker, Jay told Daisy to be more careful and then left the hospital, but then he realized that Daisy appeared behind him and said that she wanted to come with him. Jay didn't allow her and gave her money to take a taxi or call his family, then left, but because he couldn't bear it, he finally took her with him to the club. When they arrived at the club, Jay met the paid dancers and asked each of them to pretend to be his girlfriend and attend his brother's wedding. Unfortunately, nobody wanted to. Suddenly, he was called by the club guard who said that Daisy had disturbed the dancers there. Because of that, they were finally thrown out of the club. Amid the confusion, Jay suddenly thought of asking Daisy to pretend to be his girlfriend. The next day, Jay took Daisy to New Orleans. During the trip, Jay kept reminding Daisy to pretend to work as a nurse at the mental hospital where he worked. Though confused, Daisy complied with Jay's order. On a plane, Daisy kept making scenes, starting from screaming in the bathroom, turning on the lights when the person next to her was asleep, and even entering and sitting in business class without permission. A few moments later, they arrived at Jay's parents' house. Daisy was immediately introduced to Jay's mother, who then told Daisy to go to the guest room and rest before dinner. Meanwhile, Jay went outside to smoke when his father came and invited him to chat. His father then showed off his car collection in the garage. He also showed off the rare car he had just bought. That night during dinner, Jerry asked Jay about his current job. Jay lied that he worked as an admin at the biggest mental hospital. Hearing this, Daisy couldn't help but giggle. Jay also said that he was going to start a new business and needed additional capital. His father was doubtful about Jay's words, but Daisy quickly helped to convince his father until he finally agreed to lend him some money. After that, Jay thanked her for the help. The next morning, Jay was woken up by her mother because Daisy strangely started cleaning the bathroom. Hearing this, Jay approached Daisy, who was in the bathroom, and asked why she was doing that. Daisy said that it was her daily duty. At home, her mother always asked her to do chores if she wanted to be loved. Out of the blue, Daisy suddenly admitted that she had just killed her mother, shocking Jay to death upon hearing that. A few moments later, before the wedding ceremony, Jay's mother accidentally saw Daisy wearing too revealing dress and asked her to change it into the one she had in her wardrobe. That made Jay's heart racing when he saw Daisy's appearance that night. The ceremony finally started, but Daisy once again shocked Jay when she kneeled and picked the flowers that had been deliberately scattered along the aisle. Jay had to stop her from embarrassing herself. After that, Daisy walked around and got to know the people who were present at the wedding. When they found out that Daisy was Jay's girlfriend, they immediately started saying bad things about Jay, like the fact Jay was a player who had slept with someone's wife and a heavy drunkard. A few moments later, Daisy met Jay and asked him to dance. They then went to the ballroom and started dancing together enthusiastically. While they were enjoying the dance, Jay's mother approached them and pulled Jay away with her, while Daisy was invited to dance with Jay's father. That's when Jay's father asked her about Jay's real job, but Daisy was reluctant to tell him. He kept pressing her until she suddenly hyperventilated due to a panic attack. Because of this incident, her father kept saying that Daisy should be taken to the hospital, but Jay refused and said that Daisy was fine until finally, Jay was fed up with his father's chatter and finally told the truth that he was just a cleaning service in a mental hospital and Daisy was just a patient there. That immediately made his father angry. Jay and Daisy just left from there. When they got home, Jay realized that he couldn't take a flight because Daisy was a mental hospital patient. Jay was forced to take his father's new car to go back to Los Angeles. That night, the two of them left New Orleans. During the trip, Daisy kept babbling and was amazed by the car. This made Jay even more stressed. Finally, Jay decided to leave Daisy at the station. Jay said that he would call someone and just left her there. What was worse was that after leaving Daisy alone at the station, Jay planned to sell the car but stopped when his car was rejected because it was suspected of being stolen. On the road, Jay received a call from Dr. Bartleman, who was angry at him for taking his patient away, but Jay was too annoyed and hung up the phone. His gaze suddenly fell on Daisy's shoes, which were left in his car. This made him feel guilty and decided to turn around. Meanwhile, Daisy remained faithfully waiting for Jay to return until night fell. A security guard saw her sitting alone so long that he offered to help, which Daisy refused outright, explaining that she was waiting for her boyfriend. Late at night, Daisy decided to approach the security guard and ask him to take her home, but suddenly, she saw Jay's reflection and looked back. Sure enough, Jay had returned. This immediately made her cry. The next day, Jay took Daisy to the supermarket and asked her to shop while he waited outside to smoke. Soon after, he saw a police car passing in front of him and immediately went into the supermarket to take Daisy away from there. When the police saw Jay and Daisy running away, he immediately went to his car to chase them. They were involved in a car chase and Jay managed to outwit the police on the highway. That night, Jay decided to stop to take a rest because Daisy couldn't drive the car. Not long after, Daisy woke him up because a police car was approaching their car. Jay immediately hid when he realized the presence of the police who banged at their car's door. The police banged several times and Daisy opened it. The police immediately checked inside the car but couldn't find anything, so in the end, the police decided to look for Jay around the forest. At that very moment, Daisy immediately told Jay that the police were looking for him in the forest and then went to the police car to throw the car keys somewhere. After that, they immediately left the place. They arrived at a campsite and decided to join the people there. Later in the car, Jay couldn't sleep. He approached Daisy and asked her to chat for a while. Daisy started asking about the rumors about Jay, who was allegedly a player who had slept with someone's wife. Jay admitted and said that he did it because he was forced to get money from the woman he slept with. Not long after that, Jay left to sleep. The next day, they continued their journey and arrived at the gas station parking lot. There, Jay tried to teach Daisy how to drive, but she kept complaining that she couldn't do it, but Jay tried assuring her that she could do it. Soon after, Jay got a call from Dr. Bertelman, who scolded him because Daisy hadn't returned yet. Jay explained that they were on their way home. Daisy accidentally overheard the conversation and was so angry with Jay that she then tried to take the car away. She ended up crushing the car and Jay helped her to calm down. Jay took Daisy to a restaurant and asked about the problems Daisy was experiencing. Daisy said that one night she kept hearing her mother screaming and scaring her, so she didn't want to see her, only to find her mother had died for no apparent reason, and suddenly, she was taken to the hospital even though she was fine. Greater than that made her scared when she heard that Jay was going to take her back to the hospital. Knowing this, Jay promised that he wouldn't take her back to the hospital. On the other hand, the police who had tracked Jay's whereabouts immediately went to the location and arrested him. The news about Jay's arrest finally reached his mother's ears. This made the mother very angry and disappointed with the father who reported his own son. Hearing this, Jay's father became pensive. The next day, Jay was finally released from prison, but he was confused about who had bailed him out. Suddenly, he looked back and realized that it was his parents who had bailed him out of prison. That afternoon, Jay returned to his apartment and was shocked when he saw that his apartment had been destroyed. When he looked out the window, Vincent's men were waiting for him and ready to beat him. Realizing this, Jay rushed to the hospital, but when he was about to go in, he was blocked by Dr. Bartleman, so he was forced to leave the hospital. Jay had fed up with his life and lost the enthusiasm to live his life, so he decided to end his life on the train tracks. However, his action was thwarted by the officer there who finally called the hospital. Dr. Bartleman took him back to the hospital, but now for rehab for his actions. At that moment, Jay asked Dr. Bartleman to let Daisy go because he was sure that Daisy was not mentally ill, especially after hearing Daisy's story. Dr. Bartleman, who heard it, was confused. On the other hand, Daisy heard that Jay had been released from prison and asked the guards to let her meet Jay, but unfortunately, the guards didn't allow her. This made her cry hysterically. That night, when Jay was sleeping in his room in the hospital, he was choked from behind by Vincent's lackey who already knew about his whereabouts. Fortunately, not long after that, another patient saw the incident and immediately saved Jay. The next day, Dr. Bartleman came to visit Jay, who was being treated in a hospital due to last night's incident. He came to apologize to him because he had misunderstood Daisy. It turned out that what Jay said was true. It was not Daisy who suffered from schizophrenia, but her mother. A few days later, even though we knew Daisy was fine, Dr. Berlman kept an eye on her until finally, after making sure that Daisy didn't have any mental problems, he decided to release her from the hospital. Hearing this, Daisy immediately packed all her clothes and said goodbye to all the hospital residents, especially Dr. Bertelman, who had released her. After recovering from the injury and about to leave the hospital, Jay received a letter from his father. In the letter, there was a fairly large amount of money and a check, accompanied by a note saying that his father asked him to use the money to pay off all his debts. His father also told him to return home and live with him again. After that, Jay quickly rushed to meet Daisy, and when they met, a warm atmosphere was created in a hug that cured their longing. They then went together, leaving the hospital, and started a new story on their life.